Uh, okay, so hello everyone. Good evening. I guess we can start now. Thanks for your patience. I welcome you all to the 12th edition of IIT Gandhinagar's annual Technical Summit Amalthya. The summit is organized entirely by the students of IIT Gandhinagar every year, focusing on themes that relate with sustainable progress in the field of technology and its impacts on the lives of people. This year, we are organizing events and webinars based on the theme Unifying Minds and Fostering Ingenuity. I would like to extend our thanks on behalf of Team Amalthya to our sponsors, uh, title sponsor GSW, associate sponsor Hindalco, and our Tech Expo sponsor Gujarat Informatics Limited. Tech Expo is the technical exhibition organized by Amalthya. Moving forward to today's session, it's a winter evening, and you know why it's special? Because it somehow leads us to how the idea of Uber came into the founder's mind. So it was a chilled, snowy evening in Paris, and Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp, who are the founders of Uber, had to attend LEVEP, a tech conference organized in Europe every year, and then they were standing outside waiting for a taxi. The idea of being able to book a taxi by pressing few buttons came up when the two weren't able to get a taxi that night. So imagine how big firm Uber has become right now and how it actually originated. In fact, interestingly, I later searched for the dates of LEVEP conference in 2008, and guess what? It was 9th and 10th of December. So yes, the day is special for Uber for us since we have Mr. Shiva Sekar, the head of cities of Uber for India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka with us. Previously, he has served as a director at Mintra, where he handled marketplace operations, in house logistics, and Mintra warehousing. He's also been the senior operations manager at Amazon and was a part of core team that set up the Amazon India logistic business. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. So, I'll just briefly inform everyone about this session. The timeline goes like this. For the next 20 to 25 minutes, I guess, we will be having a keynote from our speaker. This will be followed by a Q&A session. Participants can submit their questions through the Q&A tab. Maybe you guys can have a look. The platform is quite interactive, and let's utilize it to the fullest. The topic for today's webinar is changing dynamics in logistic industry. Yes. So now I request Mr. Shiva Shekhar to throw some light on it. Over to you, sir.
Correct. Perfect. Thanks, Ravi, for the introduction. And am I audible?
Yes, sir, completely.
Okay, perfect. So thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk in this forum, and delighted to share my thoughts on on the changes that have happened in the logistics industry. I'd probably not constrain myself to just the logistics industry. I will probably broaden the scope to supply chain overall. I think it kind of encompasses multiple pieces of uh, uh, I would say functions within supply chain, logistics being one of them. I would say I started my career in core manufacturing, and then from there I moved on to core e-commerce in India, and then from there on to Uber. So I've probably been fortunate enough to have witnessed the last 10-15 years of how supply chain has evolved in India. And I would say it's a golden period for supply chain. There has been a lot of advancement in terms of technology penetration that has happened in supply chain. The way supply chain has matured and become efficient over the last 10-15 years, I think has been unprecedented, even if you take probably the last 2 to 3 decades before that. So with that context, I have a small presentation. I will prefer having a live interaction with questions. Happy to share my thoughts, but maybe I'll take a probably 15-20 minutes to run through a few thoughts that came to my mind, top of my mind, as I think about how technology has changed the supply chain space. Um, and when I thought about it, I think the first thing that came to me was, and especially given the forum here today, as a fresh engineering graduate, when I passed out probably 13, 14 years ago, what was my perception of supply chain versus what has changed uh, over the last 1 decade, right? And with experience of having worked in this domain for quite some time, I just wanted to share some thoughts with you folks on what it means to be in supply chain once you get into the industry, and then how different is it from what you have learned about supply chain versus actually working in a supply chain industry. So with that, I'll quickly move to the next slide. Right. The first thing, if you can move to the next slide. Yeah, the first thing you need to understand about supply chain or logistics or any vertical of supply chain is it's a cost center, right? In any organization, supply chain is a cost center. So typically there's a revenue center and there's a cost center, and supply chain is typically a cost center. What it means is in a P&L of the organization, supply chain is a cost element, which means it always reduces your profitability. So, which means the pressure is always going to be on cost optimization. And you can take any organization, right? Be it an e-commerce organization like an Amazon or a Flipkart, or even if you take a core logistics industry like a FedEx or a Blue Dart, even a core logistics industry, logistics is a cost center, operations is a cost center, right? So the focus is always going to be on cost optimization, and invariably over the last 10, 15 years in every organization that I've worked, the question that I've always faced and the target that I've always tried to achieve is how much more can you reduce, right? How much more can you reduce your cost structure? So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Obviously, there are trade-offs which we will discuss in further slides, but cost is a very, very key element of running an efficient logistics or supply chain business. Now, how do you optimize cost? Comes the second pillar, which is you need to improve your efficiency. And what does it mean to improve efficiency? Do more with less, right? And you can apply this in any context, be it if you're running a call center operations, if you're running a trucking business, if you're running a last mile business, if you're running a warehousing business. The inevitable question will be, can you do more with less? All right. Can you ship more with less people? Can you deliver more with less people? uh, can you store more with less space? Can you answer more calls in a call center with less people? So efficiency plays a very key role and a pivotal role in cost optimization. Now, how do you improve efficiency, right? And what I have learned over the last few years of my experiences, especially in operations and supply chain, transparency and visibility is the key to improve efficiency. And there's a famous quotation by Henry Ford which says, anything that is not measured can't be improved, right? And I kind of echo that words here. And how do you measure, right? And when you say measure, what you're essentially doing is you're building transparency and visibility. uh, at what level do you build the transparency and visibility is the key. All right, there are, when you're running a supply chain, when you're running logistics, there are hundreds of things that are happening to which you will not have access to and visibility to. And it is, I would say, practically and manually impossible to get visibility to everything that is uh, happening within your operations and supply chain. No, now that is where technology plays a very key role, and that's where the power of data comes. Right now, 10 years back, there were layers of operations within supply chain, and then you would probably, as a leader in the supply chain industry, you would probably have visibility only to the top one or two layers, because beyond that, to get visibility is going to be very difficult because it was manpower intensive, with lack of technology, with paperwork, with things being captured, data being captured manually. It was virtually impossible to get the level of transparency and visibility that you would like to have in a supply chain environment. But with technology penetration and with the power of data that has exponentially grown over the last 1 decade, the the transparency and visibility operations is very, very high. And you would have seen it, like for example, take instances of, say, an online shipment. The moment you order a shipment, right, and when you go to track your order section, you can literally see every stage of your order, right? You will know when your order was placed, when is it packed, when is it dispatched, where is it right now. Let's say you're ordering from Delhi and getting shipped from Bombay. You will know, like, when do you expect it? Has it come to Delhi? When can I expect the last mile delivery? So every single leg of logistics is being monitored and tracked. Now, what that does is it gives you inevitable, or it gives you enormous power to improve the efficiency of operations because you exactly know what is failing and where it is failing and why it is failing. And take any aspect of operations, right? Like so logistics is one part. Take warehousing. If you have worked in a warehouse, and when I talk about warehousing, I'm talking about some of the best in class warehousing technologies that are being adopted in some of the new age warehouses. You exactly know which item lies at which location and how many of them lies where, and the accounting of things are very clean. Like the biggest challenge in warehousing department is there's constant inflow and outflow of goods, and the accounting of the goods becomes the biggest challenge. Like 15 years back, it was all manual. People used to keep track of goods on a manual database, or there were ERPs which would help you do that. But with proliferation of technologies like RFID, tracking becomes a lot more easy and simple. Like you can sit at one place, you literally don't have to go to the place to check what's there. You can virtually monitor your stock keeping. So the point here is, I think data becomes very, very powerful, and technology can enable you to get visibility through the data. Quickly moving to the next slide. Well, now, what has changed over the last one decade, right? Like when I again say supply chain, the context of supply chain was very different 10, 15 years back. It predominantly meant only moving of goods. Now, the word supply chain means a lot more, or it means a lot of other things than just movement of goods today. Think of it as anything that manages a supply demand mismatch, and then supply chain will come into play. That's a very, very broad definition of supply chain I would apply in today's context. Like it can be in terms of an edtech company that's running today, where on one end you have people who want to get trained, and then on the other hand you have trainers, and you always have to manage this demand and supply. Or typically, if you take Uber, obviously there are people who want a ride, there are people who are willing to give a ride. You're managing this supply demand mismatch. Take take companies like Airbnb. There are people who want to rent their house. There are people who want to take their house. There is a supply demand mismatch, and then efficiencies and supply chain functions and efficiencies kick into picture. So that's the, I would say, the broader definition of supply chain. Now let's look at the two parts of supply chain. There is a supply piece and a demand piece. So what has changed on the supply side, right? There are very high efficiencies on the supply side, which are driven by scale and achieved through technology. Uh, Let me give a classical example, right? Let's say if you're a seller on e-commerce, and let's say I have, uh, let's say I have candles with me. I make candles. I want to sell my candles on Amazon. Typically, what I would do is I will list my product on Amazon. I have stock, and whenever people buy, I ship it to the customers. Now, what happens is I'm a supplier. Now, because of technology, I don't have to restrict myself to selling on just one platform. I can sell on Amazon, I can sell on Flipkart, I can sell on Snapdeal, I can sell on n number of other platforms today. I can even open my shop and then sell it offline. So what happens is, because you can utilize that inventory and get access to a lot more channels of demand, the utilization is much higher on the supply side, and that goes for everything. Say you're driving a vehicle on Uber, right? So earlier you would probably just wait for someone to call and book a ride. Today, at the tap of a button, the utilization is much higher. Again, same goes with, say, an Airbnb kind of setup. Earlier, you had a place that you want to rent. You would have to wait for an agent to get you a customer. Today, at the tap of a button, across multiple platforms. Like if you have a space that you want to rent out, you can put it on Airbnb, you can put it on Booking.com, you can put it on multiple other sites, and then get access to demand. So supply side has become a lot more efficient over the last decade, and again, powered completely by technology. Now, what has happened on the demand side? Uh, Now there is a decreasing information asymmetry on the demand side. Now, what do I mean by that? Uh, as a customer, right now you have a lot more information about what you know, or what you want to know about a product before you buy. Right? Earlier, say 10, 15 years back, if you want to buy a product, you would go to a shop, you would rely on what the salesman tells you, and then you'll make a choice. But today there are n number of platforms which have live customer reviews about a product even before you buy. So what happens is the information asymmetry is completely removed, which means customers are making very conscious choices, and customers have become a lot more demanding because they exactly know what they want and what the market offers. So these are fundamental changes which have happened on both the supply and the demand side in the supply chain over the last couple of decades. Now, quickly moving to the next slide. Yeah. So, as we speak about supply and demand, and as you start managing a supply chain function, there are three critical components of any supply chain. One is the cost of the service, the cost of running the supply chain. Next is the quality of service, and the third one is the speed or the I would say the velocity of the service. Right now, what is called as the impossible trinity of supply chain is you cannot get the best of all three, right? You cannot have a service which is best in class, which is literally very fast, and which you're able to run at the lowest cost. It is impossible. So everyone is making a choice. You can always get only two out of the three. You either run a service which is cost efficient and good quality, but what it means it will be slow. Or if you run a service which is fast and cost efficient, it's going to be poor on quality. If you want to run something which is fast and of good quality, it's going to cost more, right? And this is a trade-off that everyone working in the supply chain industry is constantly striving to make. What's the right answer? There is no right answer, right? It depends on what your customers want. It depends on what capabilities you want to build a supply chain. Uh, but but the trade-offs have to be very consciously made, because the choices that you make here will have an impact on how you design your supply chain end to end, and what processes and technology you want to adopt in your supply chain. But but you can think of any example today, right? Like if you take an example of uh, say a courier company, right? There are multiple courier companies today. Now they will actually have multiple packages. They will say, I can deliver it really fast, I can deliver it safe, but it's going to cost you more. Or they'll say, I'll deliver it safe, I'll deliver it at low cost, but it's going to take time, right? So as an organization, as a supply chain designer, it is very important to know which are the two you're prioritizing, and which is the one that you're compromising on. Cool. Quickly moving to the next slide. Now, as with that context in mind, right? How do you navigate the crossroads of supply chain? Uh, if you broadly think about it, again, when I was thinking about it, there were three things which came to my mind, which I thought is very important for anyone in working in supply chain to understand and then kind of decipher. The first is uh, when you want to think of supply chain at scale, you need to think of a gig economy. What it means is, again, let me take a classical example. Amazon today uh, delivers shipments at a scale which is probably growing at the pace of say 2 to 3x every year. Now, if you want to build a delivery system to cater to that scale of operations, you will have to hire massive amount of workforce, right? And which is going to cost you. There are utilization problems, and managing workforce at that scale has its own challenges. And what Amazon did was very smart. They had a program called uh, uh, last mile delivery network, or what is technically called as on my way. So they partnered with multiple local kirana shops, which became their delivery boys. Right. So all of them have now started delivering shipments for Amazon, and a lot of other companies, not just Amazon, have started using this technology. Like most times, I have got my e-commerce shipments delivered by my kirana shop, which is just probably on the other side of my house, right? And they've started doing this as a part-time earnings value proposition. So you when you think about building supply chain, you have to think of it at scale. Like you can, like another classical example is, let's say you want to move goods from city A to city B. The more traditional way of it would be to just hire a truck, uh, you know, load your goods on the truck and then transport it from A to B. But if you want to think of it in a very different scenario, you can think of gig economy, which means there are people who are literally traveling from point A to point B. Right? Can you build a model where you can use these people who have spare capacity to move goods from point A to point B, right? But the challenge there is you can't do it manually. You will need technology, right, to do it at scale. and that's where the power of technology becomes very important. The second one is segment your customers wisely and cross subsidize your products. Now, as I had mentioned before, in supply chain, you're always making choices. You're always making trade offs between quality, speed, and the cost of service. Uh, you have to define what your service stands for, right? And that's what I meant by segment your customers, because there are segment of customers who want better quality. There are segment of customers who want better speed. There are segment of customers who want better cost. So you need to define what your service or who your service is targeted to. It is possible that you may have multiple offerings, but you need to very clearly define which of the segment you're going after. And a lot of times there's cross subsidy of products, right? So you will charge a premium on a certain product, but you will charge much lower values on certain other products, and that's where cross subsidy comes into play. And it's better to have multiple offerings because then you have the opportunity to cross subsidize your products. The last one is nudge customers to make choices that improve your supply chain efficiency. Uh, what this means is you let's say you have built certain efficiencies in your supply chain, but beyond that, a lot of time customers have to make certain choices which will reduce your operational cost and supply chain and improve your supply chain efficiency. Like a classical example is when in e-commerce again, right? I'm probably going back a lot to e-commerce because I think that's where the penetration of technology has been maximum. So let's say when you go to e-commerce, e-commerce companies have warehouses in multiple cities in India, right? And let's say you're searching for buying a shirt. What happens is the search results are usually optimized to show products which are closer to you first, right? If you're searching from Bombay, your feed for search result will have products which are available in Bombay first, and then it will show products which are probably available in say Bangalore, and then it will show products which are available in say Chennai, right? So what it does is it is nudging customers to choose products which are closer to them, which means it reduces the cost of logistics and supply chain for the organization, right? So these are choices these are algorithms which are running at the back end constantly. Another classical example is uh, let's say if you're ordering food online, right? You will by default you'll always be shown restaurants which are closer to you first, unless you make a conscious choice to put another filter and then search for something else. Sometimes again bundling, right? Like for example, you buy a product on say one of the e-commerce portals. The portal will suggest that hey, do you want to buy these products as well because you can get both of them together on the same day. What it means is uh, again because these products are also available at the same warehouse and you can actually ship them together and then save cost. Another classical example is again, you would have seen this in the checkout of e-commerce organizations. They will tell you, hey, your delivery date is X, but if you're okay to choose a different date which is later than X, I'll give you a discount of X rupees, Y rupees, right? So you make a conscious choice to receive the product late and then make up for it with a discount on the product. So the organization constantly nudge customers, give an option to customer to make a choice which kind of optimizes your supply chain cost. So these three I thought are very key trends that are evolving in supply chain and things to be kept in mind as you guys navigate through supply chain industry. So that's broadly what I had today to talk. Happy to take questions, uh, but what I would like to emphasize is the the key to build a career in supply chain is to be comfortable with the fact that things will change. Things are very dynamic. What is relevant, as with anything else in technology, what is relevant today may not be relevant in 10 years from now. There's a lot of innovation and disruption happening in the space, and you need to really have an open mind and the ability to quickly adapt to changes to kind of survive in this industry. So with that as a closing thought, I'm happy to take any questions you guys have.
Uh, thank you so much, sir. It was really insightful to hear talking. We are now open to questions. I would request the audience to feel free to ask their doubts. We already have a few questions with us. I'll begin with mine actually. So, in the last slide, you mentioned that we segment the customers based on the impossible trinity that you talked about in one of the earlier slides. So, I just wanted to ask, how are the services divided in that case? I mean, how do we ensure that, like, if we come to know some way that a particular customer is preferring quality or speed or any one of the three, so how do we manage the services side? Like, what are the changes in that particular
So
side?
got it. No, I think very valid question. Uh, See, I think it depends on what services you offer and the capabilities that you build in the supply chain and in the logistics network, right? Like for example, I'll go back to the example that I stated. In case you're running, let's say, a courier company, right? Like there are multiple courier companies. There's Professional Courier, there is Blue Dart, there is FedEx. All of them will have multiple offerings. Like they will have a priority offering, which will say your shipment gets delivered in one day, but it'll charge you more. What happens is they are probably shipping your shipment through air from, say, Bombay to Delhi, right? It's being connected through a flight. Or the other option will be a standard delivery, which will take 4 days but will cost you low. These are shipments which are probably traveling by road, right, on a truck. So hence, it takes longer. The third option will be it goes by road. It's a valuable item, and you need to make sure that there is no pilferage on the item or damage to the item. So they will probably have better packing materials on these items to make sure that the package travels safely. So these all of these are capabilities, right? So you need to have air connectivity capability. You need to have a surface connectivity capability. You need to have better packaging capability. So all of these are capabilities that you need to build depending upon what service you want to offer.
Okay, so it is based on the product and the place from where it's getting shipped, and it's not based on the conscious choice of the customer, right?
No, it is conscious choice of the customer. I provide all three services. It the customer decides which one they want, but I have built the capability to provide all three. Sorry if I don't know if that answers your question or unless I've got the question wrong.
No, no, it answers my question. Thank you so much, sir. We have another question by Siddesh. He's asking about the challenges that are faced by the travel and logistic industry during the COVID era and post the COVID era.
Got it. Interesting. So I think I mean typically I would not constrain it to a COVID era. I think a major change in the transportation industry has happened post GST came into picture. I think that has made a fundamental shift on how logistics works because the the regulations for interstate transfer used to be a lot complicated and stringent pre GST. Every state used to have its own set of regulations for entry. I think in a post GST world, that has been relaxed and standardized and streamlined, which is kind of ensured that the speed of logistics is much faster than what it used to be. Particularly coming to a COVID era, I think there was based on my experience, there has been a genuine constraint or shortage of supply uh, because beyond a point there were lack of uh, drivers to drive vehicles. I mean, obvious for obvious reasons, uh, uh, we were not getting enough people to run the industry. And second is every state started having its own criteria for entry of goods, and every state started imposing restrictions on what can come in and what cannot come in. Right, like so, it was very difficult for goods to move freely across the country. So that was quite challenging in a post-COVID world. But I think things are slowly getting back to normalcy. And then right now, I think it is pretty much, I would say, on par with the pre-COVID uh, uh, scheme of things.
Well, that was a really good answer, sir. Uh, we have our next question by Saksham. How is the industry using technology to facilitate these services?
Okay. No, I think technology plays a very key role. Uh, I mean, depends on which service you're talking about, but uh, I mean that it's too generic a question, but I can try to answer taking a few specific examples. Like for example, uh, like if you're talking about logistics, right? What happens is when you I can tell you the flow of how a shipment reaches you when you place an order on an Amazon on an online website, right? Like first, a shipment is marked in your name. It is packed. It is given an ID. Then that ID is put into a box with the shipments of multiple other customers, and the box has an ID. Now, the box ID and the shipment ID are mapped together through technology. I mean, there is so you have scanning technologies which creates a mother-child relationship between the box and the shipment inside it. Then the box goes into a truck. The truck has an ID. So the truck and the shipment and the box and the shipment, all three are now connected at the back end. Now you start tracking the truck. Now as the truck keeps moving, you know that because you have visibility to what all goes in the truck at a shipment level, you can literally track, right? Like for example, that's how when you check for shipment status, when you place an order, it's actually they're not tracking the shipment, they're probably tracking the truck, but the truck and the contents of the truck are mapped in the back end through technology. Similarly, when it goes out, right after it reaches the destination, it gets out of the truck, it goes to a delivery boy. Now the delivery boy and the shipment are mapped again, right? So there are the technology is used at multiple places to ensure visibility of movement of the shipment, which provides transparency to customers on the status of the shipment. And again, this is enabled completely by technology, which probably it was not there a few years back. If you take another example, uh, like if you're talking about warehousing, for example, right? So if a warehouse typically contains a few million SKUs, right? Now there are multiple challenges in maintaining a warehouse. Be it can be stock reconciliations, it can be managing the inflow and outflow. It should be to ensure minimum loss of inventory. Now earlier, what used to happen was every product used to have a barcode, and people used to go and manually scan the barcode. Now the latest technology there is RFID. Now every item has an RFID attached to it. So what it means is if you take an RFID reader even close to the product, you don't even have to physically scan the product. If you just take it, say even in a radius of 2 to 3 meters around the product, the RFID scanner will just detect whether the item is there or not. Right. So it eliminates a lot of manual effort in physically picking the product, scanning the product, and ensuring whether it's there or not. Right. So technology plays very different roles in different services, but I think it has brought in a lot of efficiencies in the way we operate uh, over a period of time.
Well, thanks for the answer, sir. So I had another question, like a follow-up question. Since technology plays a big role in the supply chain, I just wanted to ask: is the current academic curriculum providing enough like skills, or what is like currently expected from the students that want to enter this logistic industry, and what kind of expertise is expected from us? So if you can throw some light.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how the current curriculum looks like. I'm probably far detached uh, from the education sector. But what I can tell you is, I think it's always good to complement what is being taught with some practical experiences in industries, uh, and then the complementary experience will kind of enhance your understanding of what is being taught, and then I don't know if it still exists. In my days, we used to visit factories or visit organizations to do short-term trainings, which kind of helped quite a bit. And again, you have to be very particular about the kind of organizations that you choose, which can literally complement what you study, right? I mean, rather than just doing it for the sake of a certificate, which you may get at the end of it. I think if you carefully choose, mine your network, and then find the organization and the connections which can give you the kind of exposure that you want, then I think that becomes a lot more valuable.
Thank you, sir. uh, our next question is: what are your views about the recent supply chain crisis? uh, and then where the person is asking the how the supply chain depends on like one particular country, how this crisis is being affected by any particular country, and has covid-19 acted as a catalyst for deglobalization of supply chain networks?
But I don't know, by supply chain crisis, are you? I don't know if they're referring to any particular. product, the supply chain of a particular product, or uh, uh, I mean, I didn't fully get the context of it. I don't know if they're referring to there is a semiconductor chip shortage which has been running globally for quite some time. Yes, there are supply chain challenges, and like, again, that depends on the dependency of certain products and the kind of supply chain on which they're built on. Like for example, a typical iPhone manufacturing. iPhone manufacturing depends completely on China. Right, a lot of production happens in China. So if there are issues on which are very regional to the South Asian region, it will impact the supply chains there. Like the other example is typically today in four-wheeler manufacturing, there is a massive supply chain shortage of semiconductor chips, and this was in some shape and form triggered by the supply chain being entirely dependent on Taiwan and South Korea, and the COVID hit these industries badly there, which is causing a ripple effect in the manufacturing sector of four wheelers. So yes, I think there is massive risks involved in how you have designed your supply chain. And in a post-COVID world, yes, decentralization is definitely a good thing to keep in mind. But we're also talking about a COVID kind of situation, which is probably once in a century or once in a lifetime. I honestly don't know if this event will trigger a chain of changes or structural changes in how supply chains have been built. But I think now people at least understand the risks involved in designing certain supply chains and the consequences that an event like COVID can have on these supply chains. While I I I hope there is not another event like COVID which can cause the kind of impact that has caused in the industry today.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from the audience. What are the challenges faced by Uber in supply chain businesses?
No, I think the challenges are same. I think if I go by my earlier broad definition of supply chain, which is just connecting demand and supply, uh, the challenges remain same for uh, any 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 organization which is trying to match demand and supply. Most of the times when there are more requests for cars, we have very little drivers and vehicles available. uh, the other end of the spectrum is when there are more vehicles available but less people requesting for vehicles. You typically have this problem in, like for example, take food delivery, right? Like in food delivery, the typical problem is your demand peaks between say 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. when everyone wants to eat breakfast, and then from say 12 to 2, and then from evening 7 to 9, right? The problem with the industry is everyone gets hungry at the same time, unfortunately, and then hence there is a peak in demand, and then for a few hours there's nothing, then again there's a peak in demand, then for a few hours there's nothing, right? So it's difficult to design a supply chain for that business. The same goes with a mobility business like Uber. Like morning 7 to 9 peak hours, everyone wants to go to office. Evening again 6 to say 4 to 6, everyone wants to come back to office. Weekends, people don't want to go out. So the fluctuations in demand and then how you manage supply to manage those fluctuations is the biggest challenge in most of these organizations.
Thank you, sir. We have our next question by Rishabh. Adding auto rickshaw played a crucial role in expanding Uber's Indian operations. Could you stress about the challenges faced and innovation that was brought to handle such mammoth tasks?
Got it. Nice question. So I think a couple of maybe 3 years back, there was conscious choice to uh, build more products on the Uber portfolio, which is to add auto and moto. The key here is auto is a traditional off-hail industry, like auto. So like unlike cars, like if you take the days before Uber, you can't go to the streets and just pick up a car and then move around, right? But that's not the case with auto. Auto as a business always existed. So drivers on auto have always been used to a certain way of working, right? They're used to just customers coming, talking to them, telling them the destination, and then going where they want to, right? So when we started to uh, do auto, I think there were multiple challenges. One, convincing auto drivers on why this is good for them, right? Because they've always used to a certain way of working, which is doing offline trips and not coming onto a ride sharing platform like Uber. So it took a lot of effort to help understand people why and how this can supplement their offline earnings. Second is again the expectations of the driver partners are also very different, right? Like they're always used to knowing the destination upfront. They're used to knowing the fare upfront, fare of the trip upfront. Uh, so auto drivers usually need a lot of transparency before they do a trip, because that's how they've always been used to. But in the Uber world, that was not the case, right? When they accept a trip, usually they just go pick up the customer and then drop them where they want to go. So again, there were multiple product customizations that were done generally to accommodate these things. Uh, the last part is there were range limitations, right? Like a car can travel for 60, 70 kilometers. Like technically, if you're in NCR, you can move from Gurgaon to Noida in a car, but auto typically travels in a geofenced area of say 6, 7 kilometers max. So which means you have to build pockets of supply. You cannot have a single supply which can cater to the complete city. You have to get supply in multiple pockets of the city to ensure you have a good experience on the platform. So yeah, I think the product has evolved quite a bit, and yes, there were teething issues, uh, but I think it's now in a much better shape.
All right, so here is the last question for today. How is Uber planning to accelerate its growth in the Indian subcontinent region? So this can be like a teaser for us. What's coming?
No, I think overall, I think the mobility market is still heavily underpenetrated. Uh, there are people who are there are a big chunk of people who are still not using ride sharing platforms, be it Uber or any other platform in the industry today. Uh, uh, the penetration is much lower. There are more cities where Uber can penetrate. Uber is probably present in 100 cities today, but there are at least a few hundred more cities where Uber's operations can be more relevant. Again, it's also a question of product market fit. Like a car business, the relevance of a car business in NCR is high, but say in a tier three, tier four town, relevance of car may not be high. So the product can be auto first. So it will be definitely expansion to more geographies. And there are also other products in the pipeline. Like for example, there was a recent launch of high capacity vehicles in Delhi, which is like a shuttle based system. And even today, if some of you are in Delhi, you can try the product. There are fixed schedules of vehicles running between multiple points. It's pretty much like taking your public transportation. You can book your seat in advance. You'll have a bus which will come to a particular pickup location and will drop you to your destination at certain fixed points of time. So these are products that have been launched recently. It's running in Delhi, and there is plan to expand it to other cities also soon. Uh, Recently, there was a news article about the launch of ability to book rides on Uber through WhatsApp. It's again a program that's being piloted in Lucknow and expected to be scaled to other cities soon. So yeah, I think if we take the industry view, the penetration of Uber services in the overall mobility ecosystem is still low, and I think there's a lot more that can be done over the next few years.
Thank you so much for the answer, sir. And that brings us to the end of the session. It was really a great session. Amaltya and the entire community of IIT Gandhinagar is grateful to have you here, sir. We would also appreciate your views and feedback. Feel free to share if you have any message for the students or Amaltya team as well.
No, no, thanks, Ravi. I think it's been a very thought-provoking session, personally for me. I think the topic kind of engaged me quite a bit and was topic of interest. And glad that you guys are doing this and using this as a forum to uh, kind of help people like us to share our experience and thoughts with the younger generation. So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thanks to all the attendees for their patience, attention, and such wonderful questions as well. Before we end this session, I would like to announce that there are a lot of interesting events and webinars lined up. You may check them out by visiting the website of Amalthya, amalthya.iitgn.ac.in. And with this, we end today's session. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.